Welcome, grade nines. In this session, we're going to look at how the curves, demand and supply curves, look if there is a change in demand and supply due to factors other than the price that has changed. So in this case, prices actually stay the same, but the demand and supply change because of other factors. And then we're going to look at how does that affect the equilibrium point in the market and sort of the knock-on effect. If one thing changes, what happens to the other? Okay, so what I've got there for us is once again a combined demand and supply schedule, which we are quickly going to plot. By now you should be able to do that very well. And then we're going to look at how, and then we'll determine the equilibrium point, and then I'm going to put to you what happens if that demand schedule changes and the supply schedule changes, and what happens to our curves. So let's start with demand first then. And they say, let's take, look, I'm by now so list for a piece of cake at a coffee shop, and I haven't had that for very, very long. So let's look, use the example of people willing to pay for a slice, a nice slice of, let's say, rich carrot cake in a coffee shop. So we look at slices of cake at 30, 40, and 50 Rand. All right. So at the moment, the demand for slices of carrot cake is 400 slices at 30 Rand. So let's have a look here on our graph. Where can we plot this information? So at 30 Rand, the demand for the cake or the slices of cake is 400. So once again, you'll do it on your graph paper, I'm guessing here a little bit. Then we moved on. At 40 Rand, so now it's getting a little bit more expensive. 300 people say, okay, we are prepared to pay 40 Rand for that nice slice of cake. So what do we do? 40 Rand, 300, more or less here, I guess, okay. 300, okay. And then the next one, at 50 Rand now it's getting really, really expensive. So there's only 200 people who say, okay, we want to buy that piece of slice of cake at 50 Rand. So only 200 people demanded the cake at 50 Rand. So more or less over here. Okay, good. So this is then our supply of demand curve. Okay, more or less, guys, like that. I think this one should move a little bit over there. Good. So this is our demand curve. Okay, so let's use the supply schedule and plot our supply curve. So what are the suppliers willing to do with regards to these slices of cake? If we take at 30 Rand, now for the supplier, there's not much profit in it if they sell the slices of cake at 30 Rand. So only to the market, they're only willing to supply, or a supplier willing to supply 200 slices of cake. So where is this now? At 30 Rand, 200, okay, more or less over here. Okay, then at 40 Rand, the suppliers are willing to supply 300 slices of cake. So 40, 300, and you can already tell me where the equilibrium point is. And then at 50 Rand now, they'll be making lots of profit, the suppliers. So 400, or they're willing to supply 400 slices of cake to the market. So at 50, 400, okay, more or less over here. And let's combine these dots. And this is then our supply curve. Okay, so you can immediately, even without us drawing this on the graph, you could see where the equilibrium point is, and this is where supply meets demand. So this is 300 slices of cake at 40 Rand. So there is our equilibrium point. Now remember, grade nines, we spoke about the fact that there's other things that can influence supply and demand other than price. So in this scenario, price stays the same. Price is not changing. Now when we look at the changes in demand and supply. So let's say, for example, especially in this time, there has now been a decline in income. Many of the consumers had to take salary cuts. Some of them lost their jobs, have to work for very small salaries or wages. So the average consumer now has a smaller income. Okay, so they still want to buy, they still love carrot cake, but the problem now is that the income has decreased. So with that in mind, let's look at a new demand schedule. So now at 30 Rand, even though it's a very good price, less or fewer people have now money to spend on luxuries, for example, like cake. So at 30 Rand, now we're going to say there are only 300 people who want to buy, who are prepared and can pay 30 Rand for a slice of carrot cake. So how will this affect the demand schedule now? So the price didn't change, it's just the demand that goes down. So let's have a look at 30 Rand. Now, not anymore 400, but only 300 people are demanding carrot cake at 30 Rand. Okay, let's say at 40 Rand, now it's getting very expensive. People's salaries have decreased. Only 200 people are demanding carrot cake at 40 Rand. So how do we plot that? 40 Rand, only 200 people want to buy carrot cake at 40 Rand. Okay, last one. At 50 Rand now, it's very expensive. Lots of people don't have money. Let's say only 100 people are now demanding carrot cake at 50 Rand each. So what happens here? Yes, 100 Rand. There's 100 people. There's 50 Rand. And we plot our point over there. And if we combine this now, you can see that let's make this demand 1, let's make this demand schedule 2. So what can you see? The demand curve has now moved from D1, demand 1, to the left. The demand for the carrot cake has decreased. The prices stayed the same, but now there's a smaller demand for the carrot cake at a specific price. So the demand curve shift to the left. Now, what can you tell me about the equilibrium point for the carrot cake? Can you see this was our equilibrium point first, when we had our demand, normal demand and supply schedule. But guys, can you see what happened now? The equilibrium point moved. Okay, it moved. It looked to me as about 35. Now that's a little bit difficult to gauge here because I'm not on a graph paper. But if you can see that, to me it looks like about 35 Rand and 250 pieces of cake. So this is the equilibrium point in the market. What was it previously? It was 300 pieces of cake at 40 Rand. Now it moved down about 35 Rand and 250 pieces of cake. So that is the new equilibrium point. So the equilibrium point has also decreased if we look at this graph or curves that we've plotted. So you can see what an effect does the decrease in demand have on the equilibrium point and price. So there will actually be a less or a smaller demand for carrot cake, and even the equilibrium point has come down. It was 300 pieces of cake or slices of cake at 40 Rand. It is now about 250 pieces of cake, slices of cake at 35 Rand. So the equilibrium price has gone down. Okay, now what does normally happen after that? So the demand has gone down, and now the price has gone down as well, the equilibrium price. Usually as a result of that, suppliers now, if the equilibrium price and quantity has gone down as a result of the consumer or the client demanding less of a product or a service, then some of the suppliers will say, but listen, it's not worth our while to supply to this market, and some of them will withdraw from the market. Then it means they will supply less to the market. So let's have a look at what happens then next. So now we see that the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity has dropped due to a drop in the demand for the carrot cake slices at a specific price. So where we previously had suppliers willing to supply 200 to the market at 30 Rand, 300 at 40 Rand and 400 at 50 Rand, let's say now they also say, okay, but it's not worth our while. So where they previously were happy to supply 200 slices of cake at 300 Rand, let's say now they are only willing to supply 100 slices of cake at 30 Rand. So let's see what's happening now. So 100 slices of cake at 30 Rand. Okay. At 40 Rand, where they previously were happy to supply 400 slices, at 40 Rand is 300 slices, they will say now, at 40 Rand, we will now only be happy to supply 200 slices of cake. So they're also bringing their supply down now. So at 40 Rand, they are now willing to supply 200 slices of cake. The last one, okay, 50 Rand, it's still a good money, but because demand has gone down, the suppliers will also say, okay, we're not supplying that many to the market anymore. So at 50 Rand, now the suppliers are only willing to supply 300 slices of cake. So at 50 Rand, there's 300 more or less over here. All right, what do? We combine these dots to find the new supply curve. Let's make this supply 1. This is supply 2. Okay, so now what has happened? Can you tell me where the new equilibrium point is? So this was equilibrium 1. This was equilibrium 2. What happened? Equilibrium moved again to equilibrium 3. Let's do this one so that you can see equilibrium 3. So what is the new equilibrium point? It's about 40 Rand, 200. Okay, so can you see the result that we see if there's a change in demand? Equilibrium price drops. We had it there. It was 300 units at 40 Rand. Then because the demand dropped, the equilibrium price and quantity dropped to 250 at about 35 Rand, if we're guessing here. Now the suppliers reacted on the drop in demand. They also supplied less. You can see the curve also moved to the left. So now we can determine the new equilibrium point. It's back to 40 Rand, but what happened to the quantity? The quantity decreased even more because we lost some suppliers here. So the new equilibrium point is back to where it was price-wise, but the quantity is less in the market. So grade 9s, this is a little bit of economics that we are playing around with and that we're discussing. If you are interested in taking economics further, grade 10 and upwards, you will be working a lot with these graphs and different types of graphs, also with regard to supply and demand. But this is the basics of what we see in economics. One action leads to a couple of other reactions, and this is exactly what we saw then. We had supply, demand 1, supply 1, and we had an equilibrium point where we had a quantity and a price. Something happened. in the market. The consumer had to now work with a smaller salary. That had an effect on the demand for that specific product, our carrot cake, and the price stayed the same, but at a specific price point, the people were demanding less of that specific product. As a result of that, and because suppliers could now actually get less for their product, they also decide, in reaction to the demand of the declining demand of the consumer, the suppliers reacted by also supplying less to the market. And you can see it brought up the equilibrium price. We're back at 40 where it was, but now the quantity is smaller. So it might also mean that some suppliers would not supply cake anymore because there's fewer people demanding that. Okay, I hope you found this interesting. I think it's a very, very interesting concept, and economics as a subject very interesting. And I hope it made a little bit more sense to you now. And also take some everyday products that you use and play around. Draw a graph, plot the curves, and see what you come up with. If you use different scenarios, you'll get quite hooked onto that. Okay, thank you, Great Knights. In the next session, I want to discuss a little bit like odd scenarios or odd situations where things don't necessarily follow the law of supply and the law of demand, and where can we ask for better examples than in COVID-19 situation that we currently find ourselves in. So I hope that you will join me for the next session as well.